Our next guest is a musician, songwriter, poet, illustrator, actor, oh yes, and a Grammy-nominated artist who has been hailed by the New York Times as one of America's, quote, most intriguing, fully formed new talents. She's been doing it for a while. Please welcome Valerie June to the studio. Valerie June is here, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, but New York Times has more to say, so I'm going to quote them. Here we go. New York Times has described your voice, Valerie, as, quote, vinegary, slightly oddball vocals, equal parts Diana Ross and Dolly Parton, which guide each song like an old tractor retrofit with LED high beams. Luminous, ancient, unstoppable.
Wow.
End quote. And that's what you were going for as a kid, right? Exactly that?
I don't know if I was going for that, but that is all a lot, you know. So
When,
yeah,
you,
sure.
when you hear that, what's your response? Like, what? Like, huh? Wow, they got me. Or it's like, is it humbling? Is it overwhelming when you hear that from the New York Times?
Wow. My favorite part of that is the vinegar because I like to drink apple cider vinegar, like, you know, do a shot of vinegar. And the way that makes me feel, it burns. I feel so much when I first taste that vinegar. And, you know, there's so much happening with it. It's healthy, but the scent of it, I mean, it's rich. It's raw. And I think my voice is very much that. It's emotional and it's raw and it's, you know, some people love it, some people hate it.
Who hates your voice? What are you talking about?
Some people hate it. Some people I've loved hate it.
There's some, like, the people coming to you like, Valerie, we love you. Your voice, terrible.
Every voice is not for everybody. Like, I love Bob Dylan, and he's a huge, I just worship him and study his work and everything. But I have a best friend who doesn't like the sound of his voice. She likes the writing, but she doesn't like the sound. And when I first listened to Nina Simone, I was 18. And a friend gave her to me, like a burned a CD. That was the time.
Old school.
Yeah, and she was like, you gotta hear this. And so I listened to it and I was like, oh, that is not for me. And then I went through some things. I had a divorce and I went through some things and I found that Nina CD or just laying in a pile of stuff as I was moving. And I put it on and I was like, man, this is everything. I had to become a woman to feel that. And then Nico's voice with the Velvet Underground, when I first heard her voice, I was like, man, that's dark. Turn it off. I'm not ready for that. It took me somewhere so dark. But now it's like I listened to that on repeat last night while I made myself a little dinner and had some dinner and listened to her sing These Days because that just was what I needed in that moment. So voices are medicine in many ways and there are different times for different voices and sometimes they're like food. You like some foods when you're younger and don't like others, but as you get older, you might like something you didn't like when you were younger, you know? So time also affects voices.
But it's like also like wine, some voices age well like wine with experience,
yeah.
With the mileage, with the pain, with the trauma, and these artists that you've mentioned, Nina Simone in particular, Bob Dylan. Yeah, you hear them, you're like, okay, it's not the traditional voice, but then you hear that voice with the lyrics, and they have that impact of a life experience that gives it weight. And when I hear your voice and you say vinegar, I'm like, I was gonna say sugar and vinegar and some honey in there. It's a mixture. It's rooted. I feel like your voice is rooted in the American soil.
Well, I can't lie. When I first started taking my shots of vinegar, I would mix in some honey with it, you know.
That's
but
why
I've
they paid
evolved.
me the big money. We
just
didn't know
like
that.
With whiskey.
There you go. Because hey, life is tough. Yeah. Life is tough. And there's another here. You're another description. Okay. They said that you have described your music as organic moonshine roots music. Others have said it's a blend of country, gospel, blues, jazz, and Americana. I'm sure you've discarded labels long ago, but when you're talking about organic moonshine roots music, describe that to those who don't know what organic moonshine roots is.
Well, I was driving back from Mississippi to Memphis, and I had performed at the King Biscuit Blues Festival down in Helena, Arkansas. That's been going on forever. And as you drive that lonesome road where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil in order to be able to learn how to play the blues at the crossroads, Highway 61 and 49, you see these fields and fields of cotton. And if you're there at the right time, which this was the right time, then you'll see the full moon just shining and flowing over those fields of cotton. Whereas my tradition as an African American, my people worked those fields. So I could see those ghosts, but they weren't working, they were dancing in the fields. And the moon was shining so bright on them. And I was like, ask as I bust on the street, what kind of music is this you playing? Some people would say hillbilly, some people would say country, some people would say blues, some people say gospel, rock and roll. And I just said, you know, I got to come up with a name for my music that takes all of those in, because I do all of that. You know, it's where I'm from. There's Tina Turner, there's Otis Redding, there's like Elvis, there's all of these, you know, Dolly Parton, and I'm influenced by all of that. So organic moonshine roots music is what I came up with at that time to describe what I do. But now I just like want to be at the place after 2 decades of doing it, 20 years, that it's Valerie June music. I'm a singer-songwriter, and whatever comes out, comes out. Sometimes it is honey, sometimes it's vinegar.
You know, we love it, but this industry is nutty, as you know, and this industry loves labels and categories because it has to market you and has to put you in a specific place in a specific aisle on Amazon or iTunes, right? And last time I checked, and I did the research, there was no organic moonshine roots section of iTunes. And so with you know, taking the time, Miles Davis had a great quote, you have to play a long time to be able to play like yourself. And you said you've been doing it for 20 years. And you're like, I'm at my place where it's Valerie June music. I don't need the labels. But there comes at a cost, I can imagine, of being so iconic. And how do you marry that individuality within a system that wants to peg you, not just as a woman, but as a black person, but also as an artist?
Well, it's very interesting, that question. And I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And I don't think about it very much.
Good.
But I'm in Austin early for the Little Richard documentary that Lisa Cortez did for Rolling Stone and CNN. And it was shown at the State Theater. And as you watch this documentary, I Am Everything, about this Southern black queer man, you learn about how huge he was. He was everything. He was a universe.
Larger than life.
Exactly. And Carl Sagan says we are stardust. So when I think about the fact that we're stardust, and when I think about the labels and limits and things we need to sell products, I think about I cannot let that define me, and Little Richard didn't. Now, in his lifetime, the documentary shows and tells a story about how he was appreciated, but he wasn't really fully appreciated for all that he was, not even until the end of his life, but also till the day he died. We're just now starting to really recognize.
He was so pioneer. He was such a trailblazer.
Influenced David Bowie, Mick Jagger, like the Rolling Stones, Elvis, it's huge. And coming from the history of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and Ma Rainey, and like tying all of that energy in, he became who he is, Little Richard, and took it even further. And so he allowed others to be who they are. So I think to myself, hey, you know, my icons and role models, when I've always sang, but I just started playing instruments in my early 20s, guitar and banjo and ukulele. And when I picked up the guitar, Mississippi John Hurt and Elizabeth Cotton were my role models. They were in their 80s and older when people started to recognize them at Newport Folk Festival, Pete Seeger and people like that. So I told myself, you know, nobody will care about what I'm doing probably till I'm dead or in my 80s.
But thankfully they are. They are. They have noticed. They are. Even though you've been doing it for 20 years, it has paid off.
Okay.
People,
if you say so,
I hope so.
I'm talking to you right now, so let's say it.
Come on now. We both here. We both made it to South by. Let's give it up. Come on now.
It's so cool.
You said something about your music, the process. You're talking about the roots, about the history, about driving through America, this blend of everything, and it's within you. But you said the inspiration, it comes through dreams sometimes. Talk to us about that level of consciousness where the music speaks through you when you're sleeping.
Well, I can't really talk about it. It just happens. And I can't plan it. It's only happened about 3 times. And when it happens, I wake up and I'm like, whoa, that song.
Wow.
Is it something that I heard on the radio? Is it something that I heard before? Is it something that exists in the world? And then when I realize that I was dreaming this song, then I will immediately write it and get it down.
So you get up, you know it, you recognize it, you're aware that's something special, got to get on paper.
It's on repeat in my mind when I wake up. Like there's a song on my latest record called The Moon and Stars Prescriptions for Dreamers is the name of the record. But the song is called Why the Bright Stars Glow. And in the dream, my brother was actually singing the song to me. And he said, I have a pretty song and I want you to hear it. And I was like, okay. And it made me cry in the dream. I remember waking up and crying and just being like, what? And when I played that song for my brother for the first time, I played him the whole record before the world gets to hear it, my family gets to hear it.
That's great.
And he was like, play that song again. Of all the songs, he said, play that song again.
And you didn't tell him that
No,
you were in my dream?
Nothing. And he was like, he listened to that song 4 to 5 times. And I said, I got to tell you about that song. I got that song from you in a dream. You played it for me in a dream. And he was like, I don't know why I feel connected to that song of all the songs. And I'm just like, when that happens, I'm like, thank you, whatever muses, ether, ethereal realm.
Thank you, universe, Kismet, angels, God, whatever's out there.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think all musicians are tapped into whatever space that is, and we get the songs from that space. And you could be waking, sleeping, whatever. It's not just me. Townsend Zant dream songs. Many songwriters dream songs.
I've heard this.
You know?
It's this ongoing process, and it really makes us question what we know, what's hiding in the subconscious, how we access it. And I want to ask you about this because in addition to being an illustrator, a singer, a writer, an artist, you also do yoga, you practice mindfulness before it was a big wellness industry bonanza. I mean, this is part and parcel of the being that is Valerie June. And how important is that moment of mindfulness and breathing and yoga and taking the time to go deep into yourself that then results in this artistic output?
It's very important. The beauty of it is that quiet space, to me, is like the fertilizer or the miracle growth for the creativity. Like some musicians listen to a lot of music and they have a lot of sound going on around them all the time. My sound is silence. I love that sound, and I love how silent is the silence. It's not very silent most of the time because there are.
It's a profound statement.
Yeah.
I mean, it really.
I mean,
It all comes when you're like you get bombarded.
right, and just watching that. The mindfulness side is that I get to step out and observe it versus feeling like I'm being swept up by it. And when I go to that space and I'm in that space, then that's when the songs start coming to me. I don't sit down and write a song or a poem. I don't sit down to do it. I am in the world, in that space of like breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, I'm walking up this step. Breathing out, I'm walking up that step. Breathing in, on. And in that space is where the songs start to come. I could be walking down the street to go to the grocery store and I'll hear a song.
Yeah.
You know, I just catch them.
It's this process of finding creativity. It's this process of being inspired. It's this process of then taking that inspiration and sharing it with the world. And you're here at South by Southwest to talk about creativity and the inspiration. For those who are listening right now, who feel like they have a voice, but they always say, I'm just waiting for the muse. What's advice for them to find that creative spirit and to harness it?
Well, what I think the things that really start to buzz for you, if you have a little dream or a wish or a creative seed that you want to water, who inspired you to want to do that? Like, are there musicians, painters, people in the tech world, if your creativity is in that way? Like, who do you admire and respect? And start to study their work and just open up a space. And then that's a template for your own creativity. And so I think that's one way to do it. And then just 10 minutes a day. That's my other rule. Is a 10-minute rule.
Okay.
Whatever it is that you creatively wish to see in the world, spend 10 minutes working on it, you know?
Just 10?
Yeah. Because you multiply that times Mississippi John Hurt and Elizabeth Cotton, 80 years times 10 minutes, and you'll get where you're going, you know?
You put in the time, bit by bit, step by step.
Yeah, and we don't all have that time. Time is so important, you know, like it's so valuable. And I wrote a record called The Order of Time because time is just so beautiful. It rules in so many ways the earth realm. And so just taking that 10 minutes for yourself, even to go into a dream state, a nap, or do whatever, could open up the portal for your creativity because you don't know how you're going to get inspiration. It's just going to come, you know, you can't plan it.
You know, and you talk about this a lot when it comes to inspiration and creativity. There's also joy. And you talk a lot about joy. You've given TED Talks about the power of joy, the need for joy. You're talking about right now where you see your ancestors, and even though they're enslaved people, you see them dancing. How can people find joy in their creativity, and specifically, how can people find joy when so many are broken right now?
Finding joy in creativity and finding joy when you're broken. Joy, there's happiness, positivity, joy, all of these celebratory words. To me, joy is something that is just always within. It's always there. It can never be taken from you. It's always there. And so that realization that you always have it, and you might be crying, fighting from using a cuss word right now.
You can cuss. You can cuss. It's safe space.
You might be fighting yourself, like just in tears and feeling so much pain. But you reach this, like, joy is not happiness. It's a knowing that all is well, and a celebration of that, the pain and the trials and all the tribulations that got you to that point that you're at right now. And it can feel happy, but to me, it's like, it's not like a bubbly over, you know, positive thing. Joy can sometimes be painful, and you choose it, you know, and you don't allow people to take it from you. Only share it with people that help you to keep it growing and water it and nurture it, you know. And
you made that choice, and you've shared joy with us, and you've uplifted many of our spirits, especially in the past 2 years as we're going through a lot. And I only have a minute left, and I'm going to be completely shameless and make a request. And you could say no to me on live camera, but if you can, with your beautiful voice, with sugar and honey and vinegar, can you take us out with a song? And a choice, if you don't mind, either Fade Into You or They Call Me a Fool.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, sure. Well, they call me a fool. Said and they call me a fool for your love, baby. And I'll be a fool anytime. I'll be a fool anytime, anytime for loving you. See, you can call me a fool. Call me a fool for your love, baby. And I'll be a fool anytime. I'll be a fool anytime, anytime for loving you.
Valerie June, thank you.
I'm so honored to meet you.
Valerie will be signing and singing copies of her books. I took me to a place, sorry. Valerie will be signing copies of her books, Somebody to Love, the story of Valerie June's sweet little baby, Banjolele.
Banjolele.
Banjolele, and Maps of the Modern World, tomorrow at 2:30 in room 10C. And don't miss her featured session, The Revolutionary Power of Creativity, tomorrow, March 16th at 4 p.m. in the Austin Convention Center, room 16AB. And these interviews are live streaming during the event on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SXSW. I'm your host, Wajhat Ali. Thank you for watching.